Hola, buenos días. Soy Ana, tu maestra de español, and in today's class, you are going to learn what le is and what les is. Have you heard le? Have you seen le? Have you heard les? Or seen les? You probably have. And the reason why is because in Spanish, we use le and les a lot. They can be everywhere. They are everywhere, in fact. El le y les están en todos lados, en todas las conversaciones. They like to infiltrate all the Spanish conversations. In fact, le and les are called pronouns, right? And Spanish, as I think many languages have pronouns. And pronouns like to infiltrate all conversations in Spanish. So here I wrote some of the many pronouns we have in Spanish, right? So le and les is located in some parts around here and here, right? Le and les for usted, ella, él, you, she, he, you formal. And ustedes, plural, ellos, they, y ellas, they, women. So, le and les are going to be replacing that pronoun, right? That, let's say, that subject. So, here, you see what I wrote, and you'll see, oh, I can see le and les, right? They are very specific. They are set in a very specific place. So, it shouldn't be confusing to use them. But they are. Why? Well, because in general, with so many pronouns, sometimes we mix all the pronouns and it starts sounding like a soup of pronouns. And when you need to speak to use them, you have problems selecting which one. Today, you're going to learn when, why, and how to use le and les. First, we're going to take a look, just a quick look to this map of pronouns. And then we're going to go to see examples, so we learn from real examples, from real life. Muy bien? Well, here I wrote the subject pronouns, the direct object pronouns, the indirect object pronouns, and the reflexive pronouns. Let's get rid of this fast. What is a reflexive pronoun? Well, first of all, what is a pronoun? Right? You probably think, oh, what is a pronoun, Anna, first? Well, a pronoun, let's say it's a word that substitutes, that it's placed instead of a noun. And what is a noun? Well, noun is a thing, a person, an idea. Sometimes we are surrounded by nouns, right? I have so many nouns right now. El pizarrón, la taza, el marcador, la blusa, el cabello. There's so many nouns. Ana, see? Anna's ideas. There's so many nouns, right? So, direct and indirect object pronouns or reflexive or subject pronouns are like being placed instead of that. So, for example, I said, Luis no se baña. Luis no se baña, okay? So, se baña, bañarse, it's a reflexive verb. You may want to take a look at my lesson about reflexive verbs. So I say, bañarse, to take a shower. When the action is affecting the subject who does the action, it's going to be reflexive. Remember, it's like a mirror. Me baño. Luis se baña. So, me baño for me, for yo, and Luis se baña for he. Okay? Let's get rid of that because that's done, right? You may want to learn about reflexive verbs in my lesson. Now, Luis. If I want to replace Luis, I would say él, right? Él se baña. So I'm using first the subject pronoun él. I'm replacing Luis for él. And then I'm saying se baña because it's a reflexive verb, right? But what if I say, for example, Luis mandó las flores a Luisa. Luis sent the flowers to Luisa, okay? Luis las mandó. What did he send? las flores. Luis las mandó. You see, las flores is being substituted by las, okay? So, let's say we're going to ask the verb. ¿Qué mandó? What did he send? Oh, las flores, the flowers. And flowers can be substituted by las. Now, that's not a problem. We're going to see in examples. But le and les, let's say, if I say, Luis le mandó las flores. Luis sent the flowers. Luis le mandó las flores. But to who? Oh, to Luisa. A Luisa. ¿Para quién? For who? A Luisa. So, that's what I'm saying. Le mandó las flores. Okay? So, we're going to see that le and les replaced let's say, la tercera persona, usted, ella, él, usted, ellos, ellas. It's going to be substituted by le and les when we say to who, for who. Now we see with an actual example I wrote on the board to learn exactly where le is placed and why le is placed where it is placed. Well, the example goes as, Julius Caesar sent a message to Cleopatra. ¿Quién? Who? Julius Caesar, Julio César. What did he do? He sent, mandó, he sent. What? A message, un mensaje. To who? To Cleopatra, a Cleopatra. Muy bien. Julio César mandó un mensaje a Cleopatra. These are all the pieces of our sentence, right? We asked Julio César, what did he do? He sent. What did he send? A message. To who? To Cleopatra. Muy bien. Now you'll see. Here is, let's say, the person, right? Who sends that message. Could be Julio César. It could be you. Maybe you sent a message to Cleopatra. You know, you also have a seal, just like Julius Caesar did. And maybe you had soldiers and you sent your soldiers to send your message. So you would say, tú mandaste, tú, Jimmy, mandaste un mensaje a Cleopatra. But it could be, for example, they. Maybe Julius Caesar's soldiers, los soldados de Julio César, mandaron un mensaje a Cleopatra. ¿Sí? Or it could be me. Yo mandé un mensaje a Cleopatra yo se lo mandé en una botella, in a glass bottle, you know, in a pigeon's feet with my seal, in the papyrus, con el papiro, un mensaje muy largo, era un rollo, so like a roll, it was so long, it was a long message I had to send. So I would say, mandé un mensaje a Cleopatra. So, the reason I'm going through all these people, it's not because I'm wasting your time. I know your time is precious. My time sometimes is. But I'm not wasting your time. What I'm trying to show you here is that this action, this verb, is the verb of the person, like of the person who is doing the action, that the person who is performing the verb, okay? In this case, Ana. In this case, los soldados mandaron. So the verb of a sentence is conjugated with the person, right? Why I don't have to say tú? Why I don't have to write here tú? Why? Because in Spanish, as you probably know, and if you don't, you need to see my lessons about how conjugation works in Spanish. When you see a verb, you know the culprit of that action. You know who did the crime because the verb tells you who the person is. Okay? In this case, mandaste, I know it's tú. I know it's a tú. In this case, mandaron, I know it's a they. Or they could be women or men. They. Ellos o ellas. Mandé, I know it was me. I cannot forget because I'm saying mandé. I'm not saying mandaste. If I were saying mandaste, I know it's you. So you see, You do your detective work here in this verb and you say, well, I don't really need he or you or they or I because the verb is telling me that information already. But this is the verb that is going to be conjugated, right? Okay, now, after a verb, generally we have what happened, right? Like what happens, what did the verb do? So it would say mandó, sent, no? To send, mandar, sent. What? A message, un mensaje, a message. Well, you can ask the verb, ¿qué mandó? ¿Qué mandó Julio César? ¿Qué mandó? ¿Qué mandó? Un mensaje. If you ask the verb what and you have a response, it's going to be a direct object pronoun, right? Direct object, right? You can watch my lesson about that. We're not talking about that right now, so bear with me. We're getting to the le. Just be patient. Patience is important when you're learning Spanish. So pay attention, be patient, okay? Vamos a llegar. We're getting there, right? I didn't take the mountain. I'm just trying to explain it to you step by step, so you get it. Muy bien. Un mensaje. To who? ¿A quién le mandó el mensaje? ¿Para quién es el mensaje? For who is the message? A Cleopatra. Esto, para nosotros, esto es muy importante. Because it is what is going to replace le. Cleopatra is going to be a le. I don't like this marker, so I'm going to change for red. Lo voy a cambiar por el color rojo. Le. Muy bien. Cleopatra is going to be, remember, taken by this pronoun, but it's going to be substituted by le. Placed instead of Cleopatra, we're going to place a le. So, we're going to say, Julio César mandó un mensaje le. No. Once Cleopatra turns into a le, see, once the person, the recipient of that action, see, or the person whose fault that action happened for, I don't know how to explain that, because of that person, right? For that person, to that person, like to her, for her, it's going to be placed in a different place in the sentence. We're going to alter the order of the sentence to make sense. So we cannot just say, Julio César mandó un mensaje, le. No, nunca, jamás, no. Now we know it's to Cleopatra. Now we know we can replace Cleopatra by a le. It doesn't sound as important, but we have to do it. We don't have to do it, but we do it to kind of summarize, to like make things shorter when we're speaking. So, as I said, we're not going to say, Julio César mandó un mensaje le. No. We're going to place the le in a different part. Where? Well, let me show you. Julio César, acento en la E, Julio César le mandó un mensaje. Julio César sent a message to her, but to her is going to be before the verb, le mandó, see? So even shorter, we're going to say, le mandó un mensaje, le mandó un mensaje. And here, you know, a quién, like we're saying, sent a message. But we know to who, why? Because of the le. Now, maybe you say, well, it could be Cleopatra or it could be his nephew, Octavian. But you could still say le. In this case, we know the le is Cleopatra because we were talking about it. We discussed it. It's understood in the conversation. But if it weren't, you still know the recipient is probably a he, a she, or a it, let's say. Okay, so le mandó un mensaje. Now, you see how it's going to be like kind of getting smaller, no? More concise. Le mandó un mensaje. You can say, le mandé un mensaje. To who? Maybe to your niece, a mi sobrina. ¿sí? Mandé un mensaje a mi sobrina. Mandé un mensaje a mi jefe, ¿no? Mandé un mensaje. But you say, le mandé un mensaje. And when you say le mandé un mensaje, we know in the conversation it's clear, or in the written text it's clear who that le is. It's very common to repeat this le even though the recipient is in the sentence. So for instance, you will say, Julio César le mandó un mensaje a Cleopatra. In fact, in the beginning of the lesson, I say, Julio César mandó un mensaje a Cleopatra to not confuse you. But when you hear people speaking Spanish, or when you're reading texts in Spanish, you will see that this le is there even though Cleopatra is there, even though the recipient is there. Is it correct? Yes. Is it normal? Yes. In fact, it's more common than not placing it. Okay? That's how it is. So, for example, you can say, le mandé un mensaje a mi mamá. Well, if I say mandé un mensaje a mi mamá, you'll say, okay, Ana sent a message to her mother. Le mandé un mensaje a mi mamá. I'm going to say, le mandé un mensaje a mi mamá because it is common to have that redundancy. It's not incorrect. In fact, it's quite popular. So you'll hear it more than not. En el siguiente ejemplo tenemos, Nancy vendió la blusa a Ana. Nancy sold the blouse to Anna. Well, I wrote that example because you might be wondering, oh, Anna, that's a pretty blouse. Where did you get it? I got it in Guatemala. Nancy made it. Nancy hizo esta blusa. And I used it for my example because I think it's a good example. Nancy made this beautiful blouse and sold it to me. She said, Nancy vendió, I said, Nancy vendió la blusa a Ana. Nancy sold the blouse to Anna. Let's see, who? Nancy. What did Nancy do? Vendió. She sold. She sold. Here is she sold, right? We know it because it says vendió. It's not they. No, she sold. What a horrible she. Like the written part. She sold. What? The blouse, la blusa. To who? To Anna. So now how are you going to place the le? Well, remember, to who? To him, to her, to it. In this case is to her, right? Anna, to her. Anna. So we're going to replace this part for le. Le. But we are not going to place it in the same spot as I said, right? Because that would be preposterous. That would be disastrous, ¿sí? Sería un desastre. Nadie te entendería. Nobody would understand you. Todos te verían así. ¿Qué le pasa? ¿No sabe hablar español? ¿Qué le pasa? Necesita estudiar mucho. So, we're going to place it in the right place. So, we're going to switch it and we're going to end with le vendió la blusa. If we want to make it very short, le vendió la blusa. We know le is to who, right? To her, to him, to it. In this case, we know, because in this context, we know it was to Ana. Le vendió la blusa. Now remember, I told you, there is a redundancy that we use a lot in Spanish and that it's correct. Well, how would you write that? How would you say that redundancy in this sentence? Nancy vendió la blusa a Ana. Where would you place the le? Exactly, before the verb. Nancy le vendió. So let me write it here. Nancy le vendió la blusa a Ana. And is it a problem that we already know it's a Ana and we're saying it and we're also putting le? No, it's not a problem. In fact, it's the most common way, the redundant le. Now, sometimes, because of the circumstances, you can just say, le vendió la blusa. Because in the communication it's understood who were the culprits, Nancy and Ana and la blusa. So you can say le vendió. You can also say se la vendió, but for that you have to watch my lesson about se. Let's go to the next example. Perla cambió el aceite al carro. Perla she changed the oil to the car. Perla changed the oil to the car. So car is, let's say, it's a he really in Spanish, but let's say in English would be to it, right? To it, as I said, is like when the recipient can be replaced by to it, to her, to them, right? And the plural one. So you say, Perla cambió el aceite al carro. So you would say, le cambió el aceite. Why? Because it's Perla. What did Perla do? Changed. What did she change? The oil. To what? To the car, al carro. So the recipient is going to be replaced by an indirect pronoun, which is the le. And we are not going to put the le in the same spot as we said, so we're going to find them the new spot. And it's going to be before the verb. So it's le cambió el aceite. Muy bien. Ahora, let me change something for you so you see les. Muy bien. If I say instead of al carro, let me get my eraser. Muy bien. Instead of al carro, I say a los carros. ¿Qué pasa? So instead al carro, I say I'm going to write it here because I don't have space. A los carros, right? So instead of carro to one, Perla actually changed the oil to all the cars in the parking lot. So you say a los carros. Would you say le? No, you would say les. But would it take the same path that le took? Yes, it's the same. You're just changing the le for les because the recipient of the oil change wasn't a car, was many cars. Son muchos carros, a los carros. Entonces vamos a ponerle les. Les voy a poner una S aquí. Les cambió el aceite. Exactly the same. But why did we say les? It's because it's a plural. ¿Sí? Es un plural. El carro, no. Los carros. Fuera el carro, le cambió el aceite. Son los carros, plural, les cambió el aceite. If we want to be Spanish redundant, we would say Perla le cambió el aceite al carro. Perla le cambió el aceite al carro. Perla changed the oil to the car. O Perla les cambió el aceite a los carros. Or Perla le cambió el aceite. O Perla les cambió el aceite. The more information you give is the less you know the circumstance, the context, right? If we understood who are involved in this action, Perla, oil, aceite, and car, Perla, you could say, le cambió el aceite, o les cambió el aceite, le cambió el aceite, o les cambió el aceite. And in the communication, we know you're talking about les. What is les? Los carros, les cambió el aceite, ¿sí? Les cambió el aceite. Les, los carros. Who did it? She did it. Why? Because the verb is telling us, right? Cambió el aceite. Les cambió el aceite. Why this doesn't become plural? Because remember, this is related to the person who does the action, right? The conjugation. In this case is Perla cambió. Si fuera, por ejemplo, los soldados, the soldiers, cambiaron, right? So this is according to the person who does the action, right? It's conjugated with the person. For example, you could say, las tejedoras, the embroiderers, the women who do this embroidery, vendieron. You wouldn't say vendió because let's say it's not Nancy anymore. It's the whole, like they do it in a co-op. They do it together. So it would say vendieron la blusa. Le vendieron la blusa. Now, for example, le vendieron ellas. They sold the blouse. But for example, if I have got many blouses from Nancy, we would say Nancy le vendió las blusas a Ana, right? A Ana. Doesn't matter. Las blusas is the plural, but in this case is the object. We are talking about le and les, so we want to know about the recipient. It's one, so it's still le. But what if there were like las muchachas? Las muchachas, the women, the group of women, right? So Nancy les vendió. Les vendió. Why les? Because instead of Ana, we say a las muchachas, to the women. So it's plural. Les vendió. Nancy les vendió la blusa or las blusas. Maybe Nancy sold one blouse or many blouses. Le or les, it would depend on whether it's singular, Ana, o plural, a las muchachas. Muy bien. Let's go to the last example and we're done. Julio compró una muñeca a Juanita. Julio he bought a doll, muñeca, a doll, ¿no? To play, a doll. Una Barbie podría ser, ¿no? Una Barbie a Juanita. In this case, it wasn't a Barbie, es una muñeca. Una muñeca. ¿A quién? To who? To Juanita. Julio bought a doll to Juanita. So we know Juanita, it's a singular, it's to her. So we're going to replace it for le. Now, where are we going to put it? Julio compró una muñeca le. Oh, no. We're going to say Julio le compró una muñeca o le compró una muñeca. Le, we know, is Juanita, right? Now, let's say, for example, a Julio compró muñecas a las niñas. Compró muñecas a las niñas. A las niñas. Muchas niñas, let's say. Julio es muy buena onda. And he went and bought all these dolls for the girls. Julio les compró. Why? Because the recipient is no longer Juanita. It's the girls, plural. So we're going to say les compró una muñeca. Maybe he bought one or maybe he bought many. Les compró unas muñecas o las muñecas, ¿sí? Les compró to them. Les compró las muñecas. Julio, if we want to be Spanish redundant, would be Julio le compró una muñeca. I wrote the I put the compró here. Julio le compró una muñeca a Juanita. Right? Julio le, before the verb, right? Le compró una muñeca a Juanita. But Julio les compró las muñecas a las niñas. Les compró las muñecas. Les compró unas muñecas. What is important here is you learn le or les is the recipient. It could be to him, to her, to it, and their plural counterparts, right? To the children, in this case, to the girls. Muy bien. Now, you may want to complement this lesson with the lesson about pronouns, in which I tell you when in Spanish we replace le or les for nothing else and nothing more than the popular word in Spanish, se. And it's just se. It's so interesting. It's so vast, right? So you may want to watch my lesson about when le and les changed for se. And it's very easy. It usually changes before, let's say, before another. So another thing. So for example, if I say la blusa, okay? You will see that in my other lesson I teach you how to say Nancy se las vendió. And then when I say Nancy se las vendió. Nancy se las, let's say, vendió. Se las vendió. Las going to be las blusas. Se is going to be Ana. Why? Because the le before the other pronouns like lo and la, it's changed for se. But that's very easy, so don't get all like, oh my God, there's more. Oh my goodness, there's more. What am I going to do? It's so much information. I won't be able. Be patient and be considerate because there's a lot to learn, but it's not difficult. If you learn it the right way, you're going to learn it well. Thank you for watching my lesson. I hope you now know what le and les is and when to use it and how to use it. If you like my lessons, please donate to my channel so I can keep making more lessons. Also, remember to watch my other videos about other topics, like the other videos I have about pronouns, about se, about lo, about las, etc. Remember to watch my videos about my trip to Guatemala, right where I got this blouse, and Nancy hizo. And remember to subscribe to get my newsletter at butterflyspanish.com. Muchas gracias. Nos vemos pronto. Cuídate mucho. Adiós.